Hi, my name is Frank Nakashima. I'm active in the fishing industry, and I'm basically the third generation involved in the fishing industry since my grandfather Eikichi Nakashima came to this coast back at the turn of the century. I don't know exactly the date that he immigrated and started his venture into the fishing industry. But this is what I do know. He went up to an area called Egmont. And Egmont is what in an area called the Sunshine Coast. And the Sunshine Coast area of Vancouver, you take the ferry to Gibson's, and from Gibson you go up to Sechelt, and from Sechelt you head north to Pender Harbor. And that whole area of Pender Harbor, that includes the main fishing village, and then further up east is Egmont, and that's where my grandfather established his business. And he was more of a fish buyer. That's what he was. He had a fish packer boat rather than being a fisherman. And he was, from what I understand, and I have some documents which record Eikichi Nakashima, that's my grandfather. He was the first person in that area to have some kind of grocery store and a fish buying facility. He had a scow, and from there he would buy the fish from the local fishermen and also sell them some groceries. My dad was, during that time when he came, he was 15 years old. He grew up in Egmont area, and so he got to know all the people that lived in that area. So, and he eventually became, involved in the fishing industry. He started off as a fisherman, but eventually, like my grandfather, built his boat, which was a combination, both a fish packer, and he also, during the when he wasn't buying fish, he would fish for lingcod up in the Powell River, Lund area. What happened at the time that the government seized all the boats illegally through the War Measure Act, that happened in 1942, I believe. My grandfather's story is quite interesting. When the Mounties come to seize his boat, he took off. He had a boat tied up in Vancouver, and he took off to Egmont. That's the place that he did he did business up and down the coast. But he took his boat to Egmont, and when he got there and tied up his boat, Mounties came and arrested him. Regarding my dad, when the Mounties came to seize his boat, there were three of them. Well, all three of them ended up in the salt truck because my dad, he was a strong, short, but very powerful, strong man. And he knew judo and he knew sumo wrestling. And so he threw all three of them into the, well, I guess he must have spent that night in the courtesy of the city of Vancouver. But that's what happened. Now with my grandfather, because his boat was seized and it was sold, and what he got for, he said, see, it was the custodians. They were in charge, and initially, or what people were thought was that they would just as custodians take care of the property after he came back from the war. But before you knew it, they went and sold everybody's assets, all Japanese Canadians who possessed assets, not at fair market value, but at 10 cents on the dollar. And because of this, my grandfather, Eikichi, a few years later, with 2 or 3 other people, went to court to sue the federal government because of what happened, that the boats were confiscated and they didn't get fair market value. He went before the courts. I don't know the date specifically, but he was, well, basically, he lost the case. Ruling was, the judge said, is that the custodian has the power to do anything in the power. They could do anything with the assets. And so he lost his case. With my dad, I thought, because and same with my grandfather, but more so with my dad, he had a very close relationship with the fish company, Queen Charlotte Fisheries, whom he sold all his fish to. And he knew the president of the company. That was Mr. Winch. I never met Mr. Winch, but he was one of the wealthy, sort of established families here in Vancouver. And so he was very sympathetic to the plight of the Japanese Canadians. So he bought Dad's boat. And I just with the documents I received yesterday, that it was sold to Queen Charlotte Fisheries, and he got a fair market value for his boat, which was $3,500 according to the document. I don't know any of the details because until I just got a hold of it. So he did get fair, whereas my grandfather, for his boat, he only got $600. That's why he was upset. And I'm sure my grandfather had this house too that he owned. And that was probably sold on about 10 cents on the dollar. You know, our family never, as most Japanese Canadian, didn't speak about it. I know one saying that Japanese say all the time, "Shikata ga nai." That means, hey, got to get on with life. What happened was happened. And a lot of the people, and I remember, you know, when they came back, they had nothing. And they had families, like in our case, you know, we had a family of 8, 4 born before the war, and 4 born during the war. And I was the first child born during the war. And I had 3 other brothers. So my dad came back at the age of 47 years old, starting with a family of 8 children. 1 was going to university, my sister Rosalie. I had an older sister, Lillian. She came to Vancouver and had a job, I think, working at a bank. Then there was my older brother, Bob, who was in grade 11. And then there was the 4 of us, and my sister, Margaret. And, you know, we ranged from 10 to 1 years old. Yeah, okay, details on my father's fishing boat given me. And his boat is London number 1. The length of the boat is 38 feet. The depth is 4 feet 8 inches. And the width is 9 feet 6 inches. And his boat type was a packer. So he used to buy fish rather than catch fish. And the details on my grandfather's fishing boat, Eikichi Nakashima, is the boat that he had as a packer is Lake Biwa. And Lake Biwa is a very famous lake in Japan near the capital city of Kyoto. And the length of his boat is 42 feet 4 inches. Depth is 4 feet 9 inches, and the width is 9 feet 2 inches. And the same boat that he had is called Nirigahama. And its length is 40 feet 5 inches. The depth is 4 feet 1 inch, and the width is 8 feet 9 inches, which is, for that length of boat, is quite narrow. Anyways. Here's the information.